Division Yankee Whiskey Trainee on your attack.
Hi, I'm Daniel Johnson of the Saguache County FireWise program. Are you thinking about mitigating around your house? Just the fact that you live in the Wildland-Urban Interface puts you at danger of wildfires. In this film, we are teaching the FireWise concepts that have been advocated by government agencies for decades. I hope watching this film will help you to make informed decisions and to help you prepare for wildfires. On June 24, 2012, the High Park fire near Fort Collins, Colorado blew up, growing to 36,000 acres in a single day. Thousands were forced to flee for their lives in the face of 250-foot flames. Firefighters were rushed from all over the country, but until they arrived, resources were stretched. Miles of mountain homes and cabins were instantly placed in peril. Scrambling from house to house, engine and hand crews dug line and lit backfires to save as many homes as they could. Despite their best efforts, 250 homes were destroyed by explosive fire behavior caused by years of drought, overgrown forests, beetle-killed trees, and high winds. Some structures were burned to the ground, while only a few hundred feet away, others survived unscathed. Is this simply a matter of chance? Can measures be taken in advance of an incident which can exponentially increase a structure's survivability? What can you as a homeowner do before a fire threatens your community?
So with the exclusion of fire from our ecosystems for the past 100 years, we now have a situation where so much fuel has built up that fire that will occur is going to be of a catastrophic nature. The problem with houses being built into the Wildland-Urban Interface is that when these forests burn, those houses are at risk of burning too. And the accountability is ours for choosing to live here, to understand the situation that we've chosen to live in. And by taking measures to mitigate risks around our home, we promote the survivability of our home, and most importantly, the survivability of yourselves and your families.
Here in Colorado, people love to build high on wooded ridge tops, where they get the best views, or deep in forested areas, which at some point may be the scenes of fast-moving wildfires. About 40% of Coloradans live in these Wildland-Urban Interface red zones. Access to fire equipment must be considered in wildland areas. Often it can take an hour or more for even local fire equipment to arrive. In a large project fire, national resources can take a day or more to arrive, gather intel, and make a plan to avoid placing firefighters in lethal danger. To help emergency equipment find your house, post your street number where it's most visible and use reflective numerals for night or smoky emergencies. Fencing and locked gates can slow response time. Be sure local firefighters and law enforcement have access to your property if you're not present. Type 6 wildland engines can go almost anywhere a house can be built. They typically carry 250 to 300 gallons of water, and the crew are experts in making that water last in mop-up situations. If a house is well mitigated, crews may be able to create a safety zone and stay to protect your house as fire passes. Larger wildland engines or huge structure engines are more likely to do structure protection as they carry more water, equipment, and crew members. Make sure your driveway is at least 12 feet wide and has at least 15 feet overhead clearance. Clear branch material which might damage large equipment arriving to save your house. Engines may not enter without a good turnaround. A looped driveway is ideal for one-way traffic. Larger engines require good water sources to refill their tanks, such as hydrants with pressurized water. Engines of all sizes can draft from high-volume natural sources, such as creeks and ponds. If adequate water sources are not present, Drop tanks can be staged in strategic locations near structures. Water tenders carrying 2,000 to 6,000 gallons, such as this tactical tender, have wide steering radiuses and need a large turnaround. Garden hose-sized spigots are not useful in most wildfire situations. Remember that roads to your house are also your escape routes. Here, an overgrown wall of trees could become a wall of fire on the only road in and out. Red flagging marks trees to remove, and green flagging shows trees to prune the lower branches. After mitigation, residents have a much better chance of escaping without driving through intense flames. Light, flashy fuels such as dry grasses are the main carriers of fire, even if they look green, especially when pushed by even light breeze. Needle castings and other surface debris can also carry fire with 6 inches to a foot of flames. Brush adds intensity and can ladder the surface fire upward into trees. This house was surrounded by 6-foot oak brush, which would have taken hours to remove. Firefighters had only minutes to spare and were forced to withdraw. Low-hanging branches can also act as ladders for fire to climb into trees of all sizes. Single or small groups of trees can torch together, adding intensity and preheating the fuels around them. Torching in a strong wind can lead to a crown fire, launching firebrands and other spark material up to 3/4 of a mile ahead of the main fire, starting new spot fires. Because fire burns upward, slope can increase the rate of spread by up to 16 times. A 30% slope doubles the fire's speed, making a conflagration few houses could withstand. Combine heavy fuel loading, dry conditions, ladder fuels, slope and wind together, and it could well be time to evacuate. Other terrain influences, such as arroyos, can channel and concentrate wind flows. Chutes can act as chimneys and lead fire upslope. Saddles are poor choices to locate structures. Watching a wildfire at night, we can see how slope influences direction and speed. Lower branches and small trees ladder flames upward into the high canopy. Even a slight shift in breeze can steer the entire blaze into a new direction. If a fire can be kept on the surface, the underburn cleans up the forest floor. But overgrown forests with intertwined ladder fuels can result in total consumption. The smaller fuels lead fire upward into the larger fuels. In a stand replacement fire, all vegetation must begin again from scratch. Many people think that the government is going to come to their aid and protect their houses. They have no mandate to do that. But when they do, it can cost between $100,000 and $300,000 per structure.
All right, I'll come back behind you guys.
Always expect that fire will be coming someday. If you're just building, choose a site that is open and devoid of heavy fuels. The most important concept in fire mitigation is defensible space. 3 zones around a structure require treatments for fuel reduction, with the 30 feet nearest the house getting the most attention. Within Zone 1, any trees remaining must be well spaced and lower limbs removed to prevent high-intensity fire from taking a run at the structure. Plant only fire-resistant trees and bushes in this zone. Aspens are often a good choice as they rarely burn, even when everything around them does. Because fire has been prevented from its natural cycles for over 100 years, small trees which would have burned have matured, causing intense crowding. In this historic photo, we can see the natural spacing between trees in a fire-prone environment. 100 years later, overgrown forests cause competition for light, water, and nutrients. Stressed, tightly packed trees and brush become more susceptible to pest infestation and huge, devastating wildfires. Your choice of building materials can decide whether your structures offer the fire another fuel source or a fire-resistant barrier to go around. Stone and stucco walls repel both radiant heat and direct impingement by flames, while metal roofs shed hot embers safely to the ground. Cedar shakes are almost certain to ignite if sparks land on them. If you heat your home with a wood stove, be sure your chimney is capped with a certified spark arrestor and trim any branch material near the chimney back 15 to 20 feet. The majority of structures burned in wildfires ignited from embers falling far ahead of the flame front. Any receptive fuel catching these sparks can ignite and lead fire to the rest of the structure. Straw bales are popular in gardens, but keep them away from structures, as they will fully consume when embers land on them. Another popular landscaping material is creosote-rich railroad ties, which should never be attached directly to your house. Brush and dried grasses must be removed from near walls. Also remove dead and down logs and branches, as they can continue burning for days with high intensities. Any burnable items left around a house can act as the fuse, which catches flying embers and leads fire to your structures. Dead or parked cars become volatile fuels and can cause firefighters to withdraw to more defensible structures. The remains of this Winnebago smoldered for days. Isolating hazardous materials is a good idea, but look for less obvious burnables too. With only minutes to gather up her possessions and evacuate, a resident fleeing the Hewlett fire told me, "I never thought this would happen." Hotshot crews had enough time to dig a fire line around the developed part of her property, while engine crews wet down the walls and the roof. From the fire line, a backfire was set to remove all fuels near the property, thus saving the house and everything they owned. This house was well mitigated, and only a few trees around it burned. Something flammable was left too near the house, perhaps on a deck or balcony. Wooden decks are one of the most dangerous attachments to a house. These contiguous fuels leading fire up a steep slope could be a fatal flaw. Clearing 100 feet of defensible space has given this deck much better odds. It is a mistake to store flammables such as firewood under the deck to keep them dry, or to stack wood on top of a deck for easier access. Spreading gravel around and under a deck keeps down the weeds and grasses, which stopped this fire 10 feet away. Some tree lovers have incorporated living trees right into their homes. This choice can backfire when nature enters a fire cycle. Vents into attics and crawl spaces or under soffits need to have metal screens, not plastic or nylon, which could bring sparks into vulnerable parts of your house. Gutters need to be cleaned of needle castings and leaves, which could catch sparks sliding off the roof. Propane tanks need to be clear of heavy fuels. If they explode, it is usually out the ends, so never aim a propane tank toward your structure. If you are evacuated, do so early. Never try to escape through heavy smoke and flames in a car. Hazards are everywhere, and you won't be able to see them. You have a better chance of survival staying in a well-mitigated structure.
If a tree has just died on your property, the first thing you want to do is identify why did it die. Is it something that's totally separate from any kind of bug, pest, or pathogen issue? Is it compacted soils? Is it perhaps the root zone has been damaged? So you want to identify exactly why the tree is dead. Once a bark beetle of some kind, Ips engraver, mountain pine beetle, whatever it is inside that bark, the tree most likely will die. If you're finding that you do have dead trees and you have others that are surviving on your property, you want to protect those trees with a preventive spray. Now you may treat trees that are already infested with bark beetles, and you can do that by cutting and laying the stems on the ground and using a solar treatment, where you can cover those trees early in the spring with 6mm plastic. Clear plastic is more effective because it creates more of an ozone type layer where you're allowing the sun's radiant heat to get interior and literally cook those beetles. Be careful when you leave slash material on that property. You may introduce Ips engraver beetle to that area. So they are attracted to the slash material on the ground.
Black pine leaf scale can kill needles as the immature crawlers feed on needle sap. If left unchecked for years, they can kill a tree, especially if it's already weakened by drought. Luckily, they are easy to remove with a garden hose, or you can spray them with light oils to suffocate them.
Dead trees don't necessarily mean extreme fire behavior, it's just a change in fire behavior. Bears and deer and turkey all use dead trees kind of as an added wildlife benefit. So if you're doing a thinning on your property, it's a good idea to go ahead and leave 1 or 2 dead trees on the property just to increase that wildlife habitat value.
Removing branches and entire trees creates huge amounts of slash. Anything 2 inches or bigger can be cut into firewood, but what to do with the remaining material? Industrial chippers render the wood into mulch, which keeps down weeds, eventually returning nutrients to the soil and helping to check erosion on hillsides. But renting a chipper and possibly a crew can be expensive, and the chip material must not be spread next to a house, as it can carry fire. Some communities have created mitigation pits, especially for isolating cut material away from structures. In areas where there are no pits or landfills, piles can be made in cleared areas for burning in the fall. Always light the uphill side of a pile and let the fire back into it to keep it small, and never light more piles than you have people to watch them. If you plan to burn acreage, like this chest-high rabbit brush, make sure you're working with someone who has experience in wildfire. Always call your local sheriff's office to see if there are burn bans in effect and tell them what you're doing. If you lose your fire, you may be responsible for the cost of suppression. Done properly, numerous burnings removed most of the weeds and brush accumulated from years of overgrazing and neglect. The natural grasses and wildflowers came back in abundance. Now that you know there are many steps to protecting your house and property from wildfire, don't be the one who says, "I never thought this would happen," while helicopters drop water in your backyard.